Yes, people, welcome back to a brand new live episode. Welcome back to the podcast. It is myself, Mr. C Money Picks. We are back for another weekly roundup, talking not just Premier League, not just Chelsea, but this week we are talking England. And I can already see Moses in the cut. This is, as I mentioned, a live episode. So guys, make sure to like, make sure to subscribe to the channel if you're not already, but get involved in the comment section. Tell us your thoughts on this brand new, old ass England squad. There are some big omissions. There are some very surprising call-ups. But before we go into that, Charms, we've had a huge weekend of football. I mean, us as Chelsea fans, probably glad to see the international break coming in now. But off the back of those 4 wins, which we said were crucial, a miserable defeat to Arsenal at the weekend.
Yeah, I think that obviously you can take a lot out of the result, but I think that the actual football that was being played, I think a lot of people are talking about how uninspired we looked, how toothless we looked leggy, we looked like we got dominated. I think it's a bit of a stretch. I think we looked pretty good, to be honest, versus the opposition that we were facing. I think people forget how good Arsenal have been this season. To be hanging in there with the big dogs, I was relatively impressed. I've said this, I feel like week on, week out, but if you were to tell me at the beginning of the season, we'd be fourth and we'd be playing against Arsenal for potentially who's going to come second in the league, like I wouldn't be complaining, especially if I found out, we lost 1-0. We didn't get battered, we didn't get drubbed. I'm happy with it. I think that this Enzo Maresca project, and I think that what people were afraid of, particularly Leicester fans were afraid of, when he went to us, was that back half of the season, and I'm yet to see the problem, to be totally honest. I think that we're rolling with the punches that are being thrown our way, and I'm not as annoyed as I probably should be coming off the defeat.
You don't. I mean, I'm quite surprised that you say that. You don't think there's been a big drop off from Maresca in terms of the changes he makes, the quick tactics, the tweaks game to game, and in the lineup as well? Do you not think? I mean, at the weekend, on the face of it, you've got one of our best, our most expensive centre back playing at right back. We've got our out and out right back playing in centre mid. Our other right back on the bench. You've got a winger up top and Nkunku, a striker on the left. I feel like at the moment, Maresca seems to be, and I'm still backing Maresca along with you, but I do feel like inexplicably, it has just the tactics have just fallen off a cliff.
I can understand it, and I also think things like Reece James coming off. I thought that he was probably making things tick. I didn't really understand that, so you can call into question some of the decisions made. Like, I understand that, but I also think that when everything was the same and nothing was really being changed, and that December-January period was really difficult. I feel like the tactics he had in place were being found out, and I think it's time to do something different. And someone's got to go take the blame for that, and someone's got to take the risk. And I think that Maresca's been brave enough to kind of try and make some pretty bold adjustments, as you said, playing players out of position essentially. But once again, I think that based on the tactics played and how we actually went into the game, coming out of it only 1-0 down, I think you can draw positives from it. I think that we have to start doing that, because if this was Man City last season in the same period of time who had beat us, or even Liverpool who ended up coming second, if it was the same team then, we only lose 1-0, I think that we could draw positives from it. So being a season removed from that, if it was Poch, I feel like he gets the excuse, and I feel like with Enzo, people are ready to go in for the jugular. So I don't know. I'm happy with where we are, and it's interesting being a Chelsea fan, being happy coming off of a loss, because I'm a lot happier now than I was 2 weeks ago when people are saying, listen, Cole Palmer's going to be playing in Champions League football. What team is it going to be for? I'm not used to my club being the one that, we have players that big teams are going to come in and poach, because we're the big team that go in and poach those players. So I'm very happy with, that's kind of silence. And I could pretty much, rattle off the next 10 games or 9 games in a row left in the league and confidently say we're going to end top 4.
You're still very confident we're going to end top 4?
I'm very confident we're going to end top 4. Yeah, absolutely.
I'm not as confident. I still think it's in the bag. I still think, at the end of the day, we're the ones that we only have ourselves to blame if we don't make it. But that result did kind of worry me, because, I'm thinking I would have expected Tottenham to be a nailed on 3 points after the international break. I can see that going tits up. Players haven't been with each other for a couple of weeks. A couple of players coming back in, fingers crossed, Noni, Nicholas Jackson, which sounds like big positives. But I just feel like this Chelsea team is a little bit stagnant at the moment. But, like you said, I'm still very much, Maresca in, I'm still very much behind him. And it's going to be interesting, because I know Pochettino still had a large a large sect of the fan base, but I don't know if you've seen the interview that he's done today. I can't imagine there will be anybody. Oh shit! I just remembered I've just clocked time and put the thingy back on. I don't think there will be any Chelsea fans still looking for Pochettino, still backing Pochettino, because he's come out today and said, "I still speak to Daniel Levy every day. I really want to go back to Tottenham. I love it there. I miss it there." And he, when he was asked about Chelsea, I think he referred to. I think the Athletic said he referred to Tottenham as we or us rather than them. And yeah, I think he's all but severed his ties with Chelsea. And that was a big thing for us not getting behind him. And I feel like Enzo Maresca, no allegiances prior to that. I feel like he didn't have any reason for us to not get behind him. There might be a couple of people that, have a whinge. He's not as experienced as we would have liked. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, he's come into the job. You don't have a choice whether to back him or not. Yeah, I just feel like a lot of Chelsea fans cutting their nose off to spite their face. And I feel like, the reality of it being more experienced managers are always going to have ties elsewhere. Enzo Maresca is potentially building a legacy with this Chelsea squad. And although the numbers were slightly incorrect in what Moises Caicedo said after the game, he said that this Arsenal team have been together for 7 years. We've been together for 2. I mean, those numbers are wrong on both parts, because Arsenal have only been together for 5 years and we've only been together for 1. But you look at that, and as you were kind of alluding to, I mean, what phase is Arteta in compared to where we are right now? And we did go toe-to-toe. They might have been dreadful on the day. They might not have created fuck all. They might have a lot of injuries, but we are also in a similar boat. And Arsenal did not blow me away. And it's another stay humble situation with Yuri and Timber shaking Enzo Maresca's hand. Try harder, try harder. They just don't understand. We are currently both competing for top 4. We are both achieving our goals. You are putting loads more effort in and getting the exact same results as we are. So all this try harder, all this gimmick, I don't get it around the Arsenal squad. And it is upsetting that we haven't now beaten them in 7 attempts, I think, in the Premier League. That's my main issue with this, is it's no longer a rivalry. They dog us every time. We might sometimes be able to pull the odd draw out. I think it's 2 draws in 8 games. But we're getting dogged by Arsenal, bro. This is a team that we would absolutely dissect when we used to play them. That for me, I don't know about you watching the game, but I feel like that spark has definitely gone.
Yeah, I definitely think that, Nicholas Jackson provides so much for us going forward, and he's definitely a player that we miss greatly since he's been out. I think that the goal drying up and the lack of contributions from Palmer is directly affected by Nicholas Jackson. I think that Palmer will tick back on when Jackson's back in the squad. And I think we could have done with him against Arsenal. But yeah, as you were saying, it's not ideal with sort of the recent history of Chelsea versus Arsenal. This is one of our biggest local rivals. So it would be nice to try and make it a little bit more competitive. But I think that is coming true slowly. I remember a time, even just a year ago, when, the idea of us going up to play against Arsenal, a fully fit Arsenal would shiver me timbers, if you will. But it doesn't really do that anymore. I go in to play Arsenal and I'm thinking, what, we can get this done. But even before that game, everyone was saying Arsenal 3-0, Arsenal 3-1. It was like a clear win for Arsenal from pretty much everyone predicting the game. I mean, the only person I know that was saying, I think we could get this down the bag was you, on this podcast last week. And I was still a bit 50-50 about it. My logic was, if we can get it done, which is going to be a tall order, we're gonna have to we're gonna have to look at top 2. We're gonna have to look at trying to come second, because it is such a feat, and everyone else below them. If we could beat Arsenal, we could beat Forest. We could beat Brighton on a good day. We could do that. And it's just referring back to type, and obviously losing 1-0 once again. It's not ideal, but I do think that the game, we have to look at the positives once again. And, compared to where people expected us to be versus how the game actually went, I'm relatively okay with the performance. And I do feel like, give it the next 2 or 3 bites of the apple, I think we can bury Arsenal. I think that when we do, we'll do it convincingly.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed. I hope the rest of the fan base share your positivity, and fingers crossed it reaches the boys when they next come up against Arsenal. But obviously now, not until next season, that is done and dusted. We've just got the likes of Liverpool and Tottenham and Man United to get past now. And Man United is probably the one that I'm fearing the most, because they're our biggest bogey team at the moment. And you can just tell they're going to lose 4 games around that back-to-back and come out and absolutely spank us. Somehow Toby Collier is going to score the greatest half volley from 35 yards you've ever seen in your life. And obviously, if Robert Sanchez starts, I'm lumping my house on Man United as it is. But yeah, fingers crossed. Obviously, 2 weeks until the international break is over, and we are up against Tottenham. We will likely have back Noni Madueke, Nicholas Jackson. Fingers crossed, Cole Palmer, who is undergoing a scan at the moment for a muscle injury. Not sure if there's been an update on that today, but we will go into that in a bit. But moving on swiftly, the other big game of the weekend, Newcastle ending a 60, 70-year drought for domestic trophies by equaling Mikel Arteta's trophy tally at Arsenal. A Carabao Cup to his name. Becomes the first English manager to win a domestic trophy since Harry Redknapp in 2008 with Portsmouth. And do you know who Harry Redknapp's first signing was at Portsmouth? Eddie fucking Howe. How good is that? That is nuts. But give me your general thoughts on the performance. Obviously, unbelievable. Not just for Newcastle, you know, their season, their trajectory. They've beaten Arsenal 4-0 over 2 legs. But this is, you know, for good reason, the biggest moment in their recent history, not just this season, in recent history.
Yeah, I think it's great for English football as well. You know, I think that it's an inspiration to teams who you know are on the rise. I think teams like Nottingham Forest can take a lot from this. You know, that we can become a big team, we can win things. You know, because you have to remember Newcastle were in the mud 6-7 years ago. They were absolutely dead and buried, and obviously there's been the ownership and a massive influx of cash involved, and obviously I don't think anyone really expected, you know, players like Jolinton to transfer into a six and be incredible. I don't think people realize how good a player like Isak was when he was initially signed. So I think that it's just proof in the pudding that hard work and determination can get you a far way. And I think it's really good for English managers as well, thinking we don't have to be Pep Guardiola and we don't have to be Jurgen Klopp to win these competitions. Like I can be Eddie Howe, you know, I can play a relatively conservative style of football and kind of mix up and figure my attack out. And, you know, when the ball starts rolling and everything starts clicking, we can win tournaments like this. And I don't think it comes down to luck. I think it was, honestly, I think that Newcastle could have won that game 4-0 on a good day. I mean, they were absolutely all over them. I mean, the first half could have ended 3-0 at the very least. I think that Liverpool, you know, they were flattered to score a goal in the 94th minute. And, you know, they looked like they were like, yeah, let's get one more. But, you know, in football, when someone scores that, you know, that goal to make it only one different and there's still 5 minutes to play, everything gets rattly. You know, the amount of times I've seen it, you know, the fans are cagey, it's loud, it's difficult, the defenders start making mistakes. It didn't look like that. Newcastle just looked up like, whoa, they bagged. Okay, cool. And just shut up shop, just exactly how they were doing. Look calm, they look composed, they look defined. They, you know, Isak, in my opinion, is the best striker in world football. And I've been saying this.
Literally about to ask you that. Is he officially the best striker in the world?
Well, I mean, I said this 2-3 weeks ago, and I think people were still a bit, I think this is a bit early to be saying something like that. Talk to me nice, man. You can't look at a performance like that against Liverpool and not say, okay, this guy plays in Barcelona, Real Madrid, they win the Champions League. You know, this guy is a one-of-one talent right now. The way that we looked at Erling Haaland, we have to look like Isak. We have to look at Isak. And I'll go as far as to say that Haaland was a perfect player for his system. But I think Isak's the perfect player to slot into your system. He can just play ball. He can figure it out. You know, you want to play deep in behind target man? Cool. I'm huge. I'll stand there and be your target man. You want me to drop deep, do false nine? I'm a technical dribbler too. I can ping it from range. We've seen that time and time again this season. I'm a fox in the box. He can do it all. And one thing I will say about Erling Haaland is, as much as a fantastic, once again, a fantastic one-of-one talent he is, I don't know if he could pick the ball up from 28 yards and, you know, turn a defender and play in a pass. But I know Isak can do that. Yeah. You know what I mean? So yeah, man, I think Isak is a one-of-one talent. And in my opinion, he's the best striker in world football right now.
100%. And it's always going to happen. It's always going to be natural, particularly with a player of Isak's quality. Obviously, every single transfer window, there is a discussion. Do you think that a Carabao Cup, I mean, there is no doubt in my mind, there will be multiple bids this summer in excess of 100 million. If you're Alexander Isak, not if you're Newcastle, if you're Alexander Isak, are you looking elsewhere at another team that is already in the Champions League? Or are you looking at this Newcastle side and going, you know what? We can do it. This has showed us that we can do it. And I can win stuff here.
I think that the way that they were speaking about Newcastle, you know, Isak, Jolinton, Bruno Guimaraes, they're not leaving, man. I really don't think they're leaving. I think that it's easy to know for me and you who have seen Newcastle fans and heard Newcastle fans for 2 decades now and know how big of a club this is in the bigger picture. But I feel for people who are maybe a little bit younger or casual, football fans and things, I don't think they really understand the depth and the breadth of Newcastle and how big of a club that is. But they're a Man United sized club. Like, if we're being totally honest, that's a fucking massive club to play for. And the things that they haven't accomplished over 70 years has been has been what is so remarkable. I mean, how haven't you won anything with the players you've had in? I mean, they had Alan Shearer, you know what I mean? They've had fantastic, wonderful players. And I think it's time. I think they've gone through their bogey phase. And I think that these players, I don't think they want to leave. And I don't think the board wants them to leave it as well. I think that they're looking at, you can get £100 million for Isak. What do you replace him with? Because there's not another Isak on the world market. I think that they have to keep these players, have to pay them what they deserve to be paid, which is a big old contract, and lock them down for the next 5-6 years. Take a page out of Bowley's book.
Yeah, I think like you kind of alluded to there, they can become cult heroes. I mean, you've seen the interview from Bruno Guimaraes after the game 20 times on Twitter already. You've seen that plastered everywhere. That will go down in Newcastle folklore. And if Isak stays, I mean, this group of players could be regarded amongst the likes of Shearer. They might not score as many. They might not, do the numbers, do the records, but their importance in history will undoubtedly go down alongside Alan Shearer. And obviously, even potentially surpass it, given that they have started winning trophies. But a nice little segue, obviously, one of the match winners from that game, Big Dan Burn, one of the surprise call-ups to Thomas Tuchel's squad. Miles Lewis-Skelly, another player getting his first call-up, along with returns for Marcus Rashford, Jordan Henderson, Kyle Walker, Reece James, Solanke. There are a few in there. But Charms, let's just go through this, man, because this is the meat and two veg of today's episode. And I feel like you could probably, if I was to guess what Thomas Tuchel's squad would have been, it wouldn't have been this. There would have been 5, maybe 6 differences. So I'm curious to see if we're aligned on who we think deserves to be called up. But just going through this squad now, the goalkeepers, Dean Henderson, Jordan Pickford, Aaron Ram. How the fuck has Aaron... I've only just realised that third goalkeeper is Aaron Ramsdale. How the fuck has he managed to get away with that? In defence, Dan Burn, big call up for Big Dan Burn, Levi Colwill, Mark Gehi, Reece James, Ezri Konza, Lewis Skelly, Tino Livramento, Jarell Kwanzaa. Took me a minute there. Wasn't quite sure on his first name. Jarell Kwanzaa, Kyle Walker, again, another scam. I don't know how the fuck he's managed to get himself back into the team, but it's an absolute scam from him. And then in the midfield, you've got Bellingham, Eze, Jordan Henderson, Curtis Jones, interesting. Cole Palmer, who we now know has pulled out, so it'll be interesting to see who replaces him. Declan Rice, Morgan Rogers, another call-up for him. Jared Bowen, Phil Foden, Anthony Gordon, Harry Kane, Marcus Rashford, and Dominic Solanke. Initial thoughts, Charms, initial reaction to that squad.
So the first thing I thought, obviously, was, why are we bringing Jordan Henderson to another competition? It was the very first thing I thought when I saw the team sheet. Was like, is there like a younger kid with the same name or something? But no, it's the Jordan Henderson we all know. And no,
Is it a younger kid? I'm just praying it's a regen somewhere in the Blue Square Premier, kicking ball. I'm just praying it can't be fucking Jordan.
It can't be Jordan Henderson, bro. It can't be. But the other thing is as well is, what do players like Morgan Gibbs-White and Ola Aina have to do to get into this squad? What else? What else do you have to do? You can two-man a league and not get an England call-up. It's mad to get up.
Is Aina English nationality?
Is he not? Maybe he went Nigeria. He definitely was English at one point. But Morgan Gibbs-White is blasphemous. Yeah. That's blasphemous. I don't understand. I think that there's multiple players that you can pick up in and around there that I would say the same thing for.
Go on, I'll tell you what. Let's take it position by position. Let's go goalkeepers first. So there's 4 goalkeepers in there. I mean, you can already tell who I think doesn't deserve to be anywhere fucking near that squad. Any keepers you think could have been in there that aren't? Sorry, because there's one in my mind, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know why he's not in there.
I'm just trying to remember English goalkeepers, to be totally honest, G.
I don't know. I don't know how Aaron Ramsdale's been picked over Nick Pope.
That's a great point. That's a great point, to be honest. Nick Pope not getting in there is crazy. James Trafford, I like that he's in there. But to be honest, I think that you could have just done the three of them. I don't think you need to bring a fourth goalkeeper.
Wild.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that I don't really see often, especially with England. You know, I think that we picked two and we're a bit shit. These are both kind of shit. But to pick four pretty average goalkeepers as well.
It's a situation we're used to.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. We've got four average goalkeepers on the book right now that could rotate and not make a difference. But for my national team as well, bro, like, give me a break, man. Dipping into the comments, as much as I would like to, disagree, I would really, really love to disagree with it. No Saka's mental. No Mainoo's mental. Okay, fair enough. Understandable.
He's been injured for 6 months, Moses.
Arsenal fans crazy as well. But I mean, to come back, you never know. How long is he going to be out for, though? Is he out like gone season long?
No, well, that's what they said originally. The end of he said he wouldn't play again this season, but I think he might be back for after the international break. But seeing as we haven't really seen anything from Arsenal, I think he's maybe a few weeks away. I'm not sure as well on this, but I think Mainoo's injured as well, because that's the other one that Moses has said there, and I'm pretty sure. Because obviously there is no Man United player in this squad. How nuts is that?
That would be the first time in a very long time, if I'm not mistaken. It's got to be the first time since like the 70s, man. I can't remember a time United haven't had a player in there.
The only thing I can think is if there was one international break under Southgate that maybe Harry Maguire was injured. Maybe we went one a couple of years ago. But yeah, no, but you're right. It is nuts to not have a Manchester United player in the England squad.
In the fold, yeah, it's crazy, man. It is actually mental. I didn't even realise.
But defenders, obviously big call-ups for Miles Lewis-Skelly, Dan Burn. Do you think they're deserved?
Yeah. I mean, I think that Dan Burns had a great season so far. I mean, even before the goal, he must have been written into that list, because he has had a fantastic season. Miles Lewis-Skelly, once again, he's another one of those guys where it's like, I think he's young enough and talented enough that, like, what will benefit long term as a nation having a player like that in the fold is probably the logic behind it. He's super young. The way that Saka was kind of being rotated in for England when he was 19, 20. I can see something relatively similar. Just get him on the pitch, get him running around in that white top, and make it feel like he's an English football player. And I think that the one thing I like about Lewis-Skelly, which we're missing in this team, is he does play like he will die for Arsenal. He does get a booking every game, and he is a shithouse. And I think we need a little bit more of that in the England squad. So, we got Jordan Pickford. He's pretty shithouse. But apart from that, I can't name you anyone else who will fully put their heart on their sleeve. So I like that from Lewis-Skelly.
Yeah, the only thing that I could say, and yet no doubt, no disrespect to him, his talent, I think he's a fantastic player. Unfortunately, been calling it for about 2 years that he was going to break through. But I just think maybe unnecessary for the first call up. Maybe he's a bit too young. Is he going to play? I mean, like you said, it'd be great for him to get some minutes. But at the end of the day, we're trying to build an England squad that's going to win the World Cup next season. Does he need to be bedded in this early? Can he, at least get to the end of the season with Arsenal, get some more first-team football under his belt before we kind of send him in? It is one of those where I see the pros, the benefits of throwing someone in at the deep end, but then I do look at a player like Saka, Eden Hazard, someone that was, thrown into the game so young, had the absolute shit kicked out of him, and then, had to retire early. So that's something that I don't want to happen to England players in general. And one thing that I think maybe why Nwaneri hasn't been called up, because if Lewis-Skelly gets called up, Nwaneri should get called up.
Yeah, but then I also look position to position, and I think who offers more long term. And I think that Lewis-Skelly, at the left back, I think that he can hold it. I think that he will have more of an opportunity than a player like Nwaneri. He's got to beat the likes of Ollie Watkins and Harry Kane. And is Watkins on that list?
Nope.
No, exactly. You know what I mean? So how do you take Nwaneri and not take Ollie Watkins? I think that's more fitting rather than Lewis Skelly. I mean, you got to look at it positionally once again. But I can hear what you're saying. But then, by your logic, you wouldn't have taken Yamal for the Spanish squad. You know, he didn't have crazy amount of experience in an international before that. You know, he played for Barcelona for a season.
Hold on. Let's not compare Miles Lewis Skelly to Yamal.
But I don't understand why not, because I think that before the tournament,
generational baller, and Miles Skelly is a very good footballer.
But you say that, but before the tournament, are you calling Yamal a generational talent? I don't think you are, man. I don't, and I don't think anyone is. You know, so you got to let them have the opportunity to become these generational players. What if Lewis Skelly comes in, there's an injury at left back, and he's made to play, and he's stellar, and he plays, and you're looking at him the way the Arsenal fans look at him, and you're going, all right, hey, fucking hey, have him, and digging into him, and you know he's coming off, and he's doing the whole lot to the crowd, and he's giving them a number, and you know,
if he's doing that for the international team, I'd have as much respect for him as I do right now, which is absolutely fuck all. Someone said,
that's crazy to me.
Someone said at the game, someone was like, "Oh, one of his best things is his temperament." I was like, fuck all.
Worst part about his game.
And that you know, you mentioned it a couple of minutes ago. The fact that he gets booked every game, the fact that he's got 2 red cards already, shows me he's not ready for international football.
I find that crazy. I find that crazy because I think that it's a question of perspective. I like a player who goes in there and he doesn't mind doing the rough and tumble, and he doesn't mind getting disciplined.
An international tournament, man. I need. Yeah. The refs are too on it. I can't be having if he goes in our first choice left back and then gets sent off in the first game of the group stage, we're going home.
Does Bellingham have a temperament problem?
Yeah, 100%. He's a twat.
I don't think he does.
Oh, he's such a dick.
I guess it's just a split of opinion, really, isn't it? Because I don't mind a little bit of elbow grease and a little bit of verbal, because I like the mental part of the game, you know. And I think that Lewis Skelly, if you're a right winger bombing down his wing and he's got you, and he looks at you and he goes, "Yeah, you're a mug, brother. Try that again." You will try that again, and you will try and get the beating on him. And
I hear it for club, but for country, you're representing your nation. Can't be out there. You're an 18-year-old. If an 18-year-old is giving it to me, and I don't know, who's an established winger, I don't fucking know.
You're playing Belgium and you're Jeremy Doku, and you're a guy who's got some experience and you've got some ability and you're young as well, and you're going down that wing and you've got Lewis Skelly there and he gets the beating of you. I think that it's frustrating. I think you force yourself down that wing and I think you get caught.
If I was Doku and Skelly was doing me in, you know, I'd give him the stay humble, 2-foot him in the side of the knee, and he'd never play for England again. I think it's a difficult game to play. I think in the national side, I feel like it's such a matter of pride. And yeah, look, I hear the whole, you know, you've got to be dirty, you know, you've got to do the little things. And I don't know, I just feel like to be a good winner, to be a deserved and valued winner, which England have not been for 60 years as of next year, I just feel like if we're trying the Arsenal route of, oh, let's pull the goalkeeper's gloves and let's do these little things and let's crunch. Why don't we just focus? We've got so many talented footballers in there. Why don't we just focus on the football? Because we had the amount of talent in that squad in 2024. We should have won the tournament. In 2022, we should have won the tournament. But we were playing haram ball under Gareth Southgate that was not allowing these players to creatively express themselves. That is essentially what we need. And I think we are going to get the nitty gritty with Thomas Tuchel. I wouldn't be surprised to see us line up in a back 5 and, you know, it to be very, very compact and difficult to break down. But I do want to see somebody unlock these talented youngsters, because there is so much creative flair in this England side. I mean, I don't want to say that we've got players of Yamal quality, but we've got players that can do what Yamal's been doing, maybe not to the same level or consistency, but we've got players like Phil Foden, Cole Palmer, Bukayo Saka, who on their day are top 5 in the world in their position. So this England squad, I personally think we should be looking at this as the golden era and going, you know what? Let's just create a new look squad, a new look side. And unfortunately, we haven't seen, you know, the changing of the guard with Jordan Henderson being recalled. But I feel like looking to next year, it should just be fast. It should just be the other side of the coin to what we've seen under Gareth Southgate. And I just don't know if Miles Lewis Skelly is that sort of player.
Well, I mean, I was going to ask you, it's a great segue. I mean, speaking about Tuchel's system, it's something that we know in detail. And playing that 5-3-2, that 3-5-2, whatever you want to call it, with the 5 defenders at the back. Where do you fit Morgan Rogers? I don't understand it. That's the one that I'm trying to think on like a technical side. Like, where does he squeeze in? Because he's a left-sided player, and I would go as far as to call him a left winger. I actually think he's a lot more attacking than people give him credit for. But there's 2 strikers in there, and he's not listed as one of them. He'll be playing in midfield, but he can't play central. And if he plays left mid, he'll be way too defensive. I don't like the idea of him playing as a left mid in a 5. So that's where I'm confused. Is certain things like that, like Henderson for a 3-5-2. Arguably, it's one of the better players that you can put in that DM position. It's just very leggy, very old, and it's got injury written all over it. It's got malperformance written all over it. So I understand. Like a Mainu being a better version of that. Once again, can't comment whether injured or whatnot. But players like Morgan Rogers, just where do you fit them into the system?
Do you think, just very quickly, do you think he'll start Harry Kane up top?
Yes, I do.
This is the World Cup.
I really do.
Year. Yeah. Do you think he'll play another striker then? Because I don't really remember Tuchel embracing the 2. I know he kind of liked to play with 2 striker types, but it was never really a 2 up top. It was always kind of one playing off. And I do feel like Rodgers could maybe do that floating role, or maybe it'd be the 10. But then again, you're losing
you got Harry Kane. Yeah, exactly. And this is why I'm confused because as you said, if you're doing the 2 striker push and pull type thing, Harry Kane has got to be the pull. He cannot be the push anymore. He has to be the one that sits a little deeper in front of the 10, connecting it up top. But I can't leave Morgan Rogers as my nation's number 1 sole 9 as like the goal tick, and maybe a Palmer is that guy. But once again, Palmer is a player who's grown into the 10. He's grown into an attacking midfield player. He likes to sit a little bit deeper, just on the cusp of that box. I don't see him as the target, and at this point, I can't see Harry Kane as the target man. So who is it? You know what I mean? And this is another thing that draws concern is what 2 strikers do we play? Who's going up and who's going down? Because the worry for me is it's Marcus Rashford.
Would that be your, and this is not just looking at the squad, this is looking at players like Watkins who have been omitted. Would that be your logical go-to as a second striker in a Tuchel system?
I think so, man. I really do. With the picks that he's made, I think that it makes sense.
Where do you stand on Watkins? Do you think he should have been in this squad?
I do. I do. I really, really do. I think that I don't know if something's gone on, if he's had a word with Thomas Tuchel and he said, I don't feel fit enough to play. I don't want to underrepresent myself because I will start if I'm on that plane. I don't know if he's struggling fucking mentally or something, man. Like I couldn't tell you, but it can't be about footballing ability. If he's fully fit, it cannot be about footballing ability because he has to go.
No, I would have hated to be. I can't imagine a situation where you're in that Aston Villa dressing room and Morgan Rogers' phone rings and
yours doesn't. You're Ollie Watkins, yeah.
He must have a niggle or something. But I mean, Solanke back in there. Are we happy with that? Do you think he'd be a starter, or are you still Rashford over Solanke?
Yeah, I'm Rashford over Solanke, man. Like if I'm
that stinks. That is Solanke.
Solanke huffs, bro, and you know that. Chelsea fans, bro, we know that Solanke doesn't quite cut it, bro. And I mean, to go from Chelsea, Bournemouth, and Spurs, and to not make it figure itself out. I mean, you couldn't do it for a big team, so you go to a small team. You couldn't really do it. You could a little bit. You could make yourself look good on days, but then to go to Spurs, be everything that they've ever had up top, and not make it click, it's confusing.
God, I'll tell you what, who I've just thought. What happened to Matthias Tell? Has he played for Tottenham?
Who's that, bro? Do you know what I mean? I'm pretty sure he bagged once on his debut or second game.
Is he getting in the squad? Like, all I've seen is a video of him from Fulham telling the fucking fans, "Leave us alone."
Facts.
Get paid £100 a week to sit on the bench. That is absolutely nuts.
No, he's definitely been playing to some capacity because I've seen him in and around, but yeah, I think he's not at the level that they expected him to be honest. Or me, to be totally honest. I was high on the kid.
Yeah. Some other big omissions. I mean, I don't know how big of an omission it is. I can't lie. I'm surprised he hasn't been called up under Thomas Tuchel. Conor Gallagher.
Yeah.
I would have thought that Tuchel would have really, really liked him. Not so much surprised, but James Maddison, obviously at Tottenham. Ivan Toney. I mean, and as you said, Morgan Gibbs-White. There are plenty of players in there that could have been called up. That maybe logically it makes more sense to include them rather than a a Marcus Rashford who hasn't played for a while, or, you know, Jordan Henderson, who doesn't even get into the Ajax first team. So God knows how he's going to get into the England first team. But yeah, go on. As a general kind of reaction to this and, you know, Thomas Tuchel as a whole, are you excited? Are you looking forward to seeing England next year? Are you looking forward to this team, or has this announcement kind of made you a little bit more tentative about how he might perform in next year's World Cup?
Yeah, a little bit of both. You know, it wouldn't be the first time I've looked at Tuchel's decision making and gone, what are we doing? But every time I do that, I get shut up. You know, I get a champion. The year we won the Champions League, honestly, at the beginning of the tournament, I was like, oh my God, we're not even going to make the group stages, mate. What are we doing with this side? And by the end of it, you know, I was thinking Mason Mount was the second coming. So I think that what he's able to get out of players is really interesting. It's always the players you don't expect. I think that the football that he plays is very tactically astute. And I think that he knows the system that he likes to play very, very well. Like he's a very clever guy. And I think that, you know, things like Jordan Henderson, it's easy for us as you know, casuals of that side of the sport and deeply passionate fans to go, hang on a minute, you can't have Jordan Henderson playing ball. Maybe it's not about that. Maybe it's about what he brings to the dressing room and the experience, having a bit of age and having someone who's going to be like, listen, this didn't work at the last 3 tournaments. Trust me, I was there. And using that deep football IQ, that philosophic sort of style and imposing that into the football, I think that it's going to be a lot smarter than we might realize right now. So I'm just going to put my hands up and just put the pillow by my head and just fall asleep watching the England, and hopefully it keeps me awake, because I'm used to being bedded quite early for England matches. So yeah, hopefully it's something exciting, something new, something very Thomas Tuchel, which is always fun and exciting. So yeah, man, I think that we just have to, once again, as we've said, for 15 managers over the last 5 years, we just got to trust the process and just let it happen.
Yeah, well, we will find out soon enough. Obviously, that first game against Albania on Friday at 7:45. You will probably get some sort of preview content from us, but we'll keep you posted on that anyway. Lastly, on the England squad, and just on that point, and I think I agree with you. This, you know, everyone's going nuts over Jordan Henderson, Kyle Walker. They might not go to the World Cup. Like, this is Thomas Tuchel's first international squad, where you're right, he probably has just had a list of 5 or 6 old faithfuls that he knows aren't going to be his starters. But if something goes tits up, if his player that he wants to start gets injured, there's somebody that knows the role, knows the responsibilities. If Reece James isn't fit enough to start, he's got Kyle Walker in there, or he doesn't need to tell what to do. He can just go, right, yeah, go on, Kyle, fill in there. And realistically, they might be part of the squad for the first 2-3 international breaks, just to kind of help transition the process, transition the you know, the old backroom staff, getting people used to Tuchel, keeping the dressing room together. Because, you know, Thomas Tuchel, notoriously stubborn, difficult man. I do think it's going, you know, there is potentially a case for him having some of these, you know, more senior players in the squad to help him, you know, talk to these youngsters and get the best out of them. And then, you know, come 2-3 months, we're never going to see Jordan Henderson in an England shirt again. I definitely wouldn't have thought he would be taken to the World Cup next year. And you listen to Dan Burns' interview on you know, why he thought he would be a great fit for England. He said, I can offer as much off the pitch as I can on. You know, I'm a born leader on and off the pitch, and that is what I feel like I can contribute. So yeah, you know, good to have players that have been there, done that to a certain extent. But, you know, obviously would be nice if this group of players could actually go and do that being win a trophy. But moving on from England and circling, bringing it back full circle to Chelsea, at the behest of, at the disgust, more likely, of a lot of Chelsea fans, another £70 million has been spent. I'm not really sure how to believe. I'm not really sure. I don't really know how to feel.
Yeah, I agree, bro.
I'm
not mad, though. I'm not mad.
See, that's the thing. I'm not, you know, if you keep telling me that Chelsea have just bought one of 3 of the best under-17s in the world, and the other 2 are already on our books, you think I'm going to be mad that we're signing Giovanni Quetta? All of that shit Man United fans were talking over January. Oh, we've done it. The deal's done, deal signed. And it's kind of like the Pedro Neto deal where Chelsea have managed to move in silence, managed to get it done. £40 million is the reported fee. I think it's there or thereabouts. It's translated from euros. But 17-year-old winger from Sporting Lisbon, set to join in the summer of 2026. So not next year, and not this year, next year. He is known for his dribbling, his flair, his pace. He is an incredibly tricky player. He can play wing back on the wing. The thought is that Amorim would more likely have wanted to utilise him in a wing-back position, whereas Chelsea will more likely use him further up the field, which is why he apparently, one of the reasons he wanted to come to us instead. But he averages 2.4 chances created per 90 minutes, putting him in the top 5% of wingers in Portugal's top flight. Charms, initial reaction to the signing of Giovanni Quenda?
I mean, at first, my initial reaction was nice. We've spent lots of money on another winger. Fantastic, great. I can't wait for this guy to not play and go on loan somewhere random. And I was looking at the fee, and that's when I was like, okay, because we're at the minute counting our pennies. We're not really going out there and making boom, £100 million striker. And I think that's what a lot of people called into question is like, why are you buying a bunch of £30 million players? But this is another one. 40 million at the age of 17. What? Okay, cool. So we're gonna spend, yeah. And then you do 2 minutes. I mean, you asked me just 45 minutes before the stream, like, have you brushed up much? I was thinking, nah, not really, man. Like, I've just heard it around. I know the rumors. It is what it is. And then I just thought, okay, let's do it. Kenda highlights. 30 seconds in, baller. One-on-one in people. Like, got the same thing that I like about Esteval, where he's aggressive. He just wants to dribble and he wants to lock off. He's got a bit of a Palmer vibe about him, and I feel like once he develops that aggressive Nicholas Jackson, tenacious, I want to be a dog and run up at people, and once he develops that, and obviously being so young, drink a little bit of that muscle milk and get up into your invincible size, and all of a sudden that's a serious presence. Because my God, the physicality that the kid's got at his age, before he's even maxed into his prime, it's like, wow. He's got a little bit of this and a bit of that. He's got a bit of like a bit of Diego Costa in him at times as well. You know what I mean? He looks like he just wants to be gunning at people. And yeah, man, I just give this kid 3 or 4 years. Let him reach his peak. No promises, no false hope. Send him Strasbourg. Let him cook in France. Bring him back, baller. And I love it. I really do like the signing. I think that it's probably the better of the two that we signed, to be honest.
100%. Definitely the more exciting of the two. Definitely the one that is going to, get Chelsea fans off their feet, and the one that, if I'd recommend you want to go and get excited over a comp, I'm definitely recommending you go and watch Quenda over Asugo. But similarly astute signing in Asugo, 20 years old, again from Sporting Lisbon. So, good that we've got good relationships over there. If we do want to, pull the trigger on a certain 80 mil rated striker at Sporting Lisbon currently in the summer. I mean, if Victor Gyökeres was to come through, if we were to be nurturing this relationship, I'd happily take the loss on both Quenda and Asugo. But Asugo, the other side of that coin, Quenda's all about flair, excitement going forward. Asugo is all about the dirty work, the basics. He's not quite a Caicedo, but he's very, very similar in terms of his aggressive ball-winning abilities in central midfield. I think it was something like 1.9 tackles made, 1.9 interceptions per 90 minutes, one of the top players in La Liga. Very, very good physically for a 20-year-old. And obviously playing at Las Palmas is playing in the top level. So you've got there two young players who are already playing in a top league in Europe, know what it takes to play European football to some extent as well. I think Asugo would have played it at the youth stages, but Quenda obviously involved with Sporting in the European competitions. Seems like Chelsea, I mean, this one's a little bit more of a, we've got similar profiles, because he's not a set the world alike kind of signing. And I do kind of question where he will fit in amongst Andre Santos, Leslie Ugo-Chukwu. I mean, has Leslie Ugo-Chukwu got a chance? I feel like we might as well write him off now.
I was saying that after the last signing that we made 2 months ago, bro. That geezer we didn't know about the DM.
Amugu, I mean, he might as well be written off. We've literally just got a replacement for Amugu, who hasn't played a second since we signed him.
It's mad, isn't it? It is actually mad. But yeah, it's really interesting. Maybe we're looking at selling Andre Santos. Who knows? I don't understand.
I hope not. And from what Fab said this week, that's definitely not the case. Chelsea are going to be using Andre Santos to kind of compete with Romeo Lavia next season.
In what role? In what role does Romeo Lavia hold down? What, he's going to be replacing him as rotational bench player?
Medical table. Yeah, the injury table.
Do you know what I mean? Like what? I don't know, man. It's
who plays
a rock in a hard place, man.
Who plays monkey rush in training? Who gets the extra player? Who's the one in the yellow bib when everyone's got two teams?
That's what I'm saying, bro. That's what I'm saying. Who's wearing the bright green, blood? Do you know what I mean?
Nuts.
But yeah, confusing.
Nuts. As we said, look, we're not going to be mad at Chelsea stockpiling young talent. However, it does kind of strike me as particularly the Asugo. I mean, it's a player that we've been linked to for a while, for over a year, if I'm not mistaken. So, you know, good to see that we've pulled a trigger for a reasonable fee. But yeah, it's not one that I can kind of see a massive future for at the moment, particularly with the fact that he's, you know, we brought him in and he's been likened to Caicedo. Bro, Caicedo's got 15 years on the clock as is. He's only 22, 23. Lavia's only 22, 20. Yeah, we got a long time for a lot of these Chelsea players to hit their prime. But fingers crossed both of those players can stay injury-free until then, because, you know, certain players, Gavi, you know, he doesn't look the same after his ACL. If Quenda does his ACL, you know, we've spunk 40 million down the drain before he's even played a minute in a Chelsea shirt. It's going to be a bit nuts. But, you know, let us know what you think in the comments about the signings in general and, of course, about the individual players. If you are particularly brushed up in terms of your knowledge on either of them, let us know what you think. Will they be a good fit for Chelsea? Will they play? And who is going to lose their place if they do come back in? But yeah, I think that just about rounds it up for this week. As I said, obviously, we've got England on Friday. So you might get a chopping it up with Charms before then. You might get a loan watch, because I haven't put one of those out in a while. So I might do a loan watch episode tomorrow, put that out tomorrow or Thursday. There will be plenty of content from Two Blues over the international break. So obviously, as always, make sure to like, comment, subscribe to the channel if you're not already. Follow at Two Blues Podcast on the Instagram and the TikTok to keep up to date on everything going on. You know who it is, man. Myself, Mr. C Money Picks. We will be back very, very soon. Up the Chelsea.